Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namaskar. Today I'm going to be talking about verses 26 and 27 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham. The background of these two verses is once Bhagavan was asked to select some verses which are the essence of Yoga Vashishta. So Bhagavan pointed out a chapter of 10 verses. Later, when he looked in there's a Tamil version of Yoga Vashishta called Jnana Vashishtam. When he looked in that, in the Tamil Jnana Vashishtam, he found only only 6 of those 10 verses have been translated into Tamil. The reason for that is the Tamil Jnana Vashishtam is not a translation of the complete Yoga Vashishta, but of the Uڵḷadu Yoga Vashishta, which is an abbreviated form of the whole work is called the Brihad Yoga Vashishta, and the Uڵḷadu Yoga Vashishta is a selection of verses from that. So since the Tamil version is a translation of the translation or adaptation of the Uڵḷadu Yoga Vashishta, and in the Uڵḷadu Yoga Vashishta only 6 of those 10 verses are translated, Bhagavan decided to translate the other 4 verses. Because the meter in which the Jnana Vashishta is written is a longer meter, in many cases, such as for the respect to these verses, 2 Sanskrit verses are translated as 1 Tamil verse. So each Tamil verse is a translation of 2 Sanskrit ones. So Bhagavan translated the 4 verses that were not translated already in Tamil in Jnana Vashishta. Bhagavan translated them in the same meter as it is in Jnana Vashishta. Bhagavan translated it into Tamil. The significance of these verses, these are instructions given by Vashishta to Rama after Rama had attained jnana. Obviously, after attaining jnana, no teachings are necessary. But a work like Yoga Vashishta is giving teachings to those of us who haven't yet attained jnana. So these teachings, as if Vashishta is giving instructions to Rama after Rama has attained jnana, these teachings are given. But why Bhagavan selected these verses? These give us these are very good pointers how we should, though we haven't attained jnana yet, we are still aspirants, but how as aspirants we should live in this world. That is, outwardly, we all have certain roles. We have certain roles within family, we have certain roles within society, within the workplace and everything. We have to outwardly play the role, but inwardly be detached. So if within a family, we are children to our parents, we are a husband or wife to our wife or husband, we are a mother or father to our children, and we are a sibling to our brothers and sisters, and so on and so forth. We have so many relationships, family relationships. We also have relationships with other people. We have friends, we have people we come across in all sorts of walks of life, both professionally and socially. We have so many acquaintances, and according to the different roles we play, if we're in the workplace, for example, we may be a manager, we may be managing people who are working under us, but every manager has a manager above them, unless they're a CEO or someone. So we have different we have certain responsibility to those who are above us in the organization. We have certain responsibility to those who are below us in the organization. And why we are working to earn a livelihood for our family. So our work is also a responsibility we have for our family. We have to do the work properly in order to merit the salary and to support our family. So in the state of embodied existence, we all have so many roles. Even if outwardly we live a life of outward renunciation by becoming a sannyasi, still a sannyasi has certain role in society. It's not the same sort of role that a householder would have, but they have a certain role. So we all inevitably have roles and relationships in society. So we have to act appropriate to the roles that we play. But what is acting these outward roles is ourself as a person. In this path of self-investigation or self-surrender, we are trying to separate ourselves from this person. So this person we take ourselves to be has to play all the roles, play each of the various roles that it has in society. It has to play those roles appropriately. But inwardly, we need to detach ourselves from this person whom we seem to be. So that is basically what these verses are teaching. And that is why Bhagavan selected these verses, because so long as we're a spiritual aspirant, we have an outward life as a person, and we have an inward life as a spiritual aspirant. The inward life of a spiritual aspirant, our role as a spiritual aspirant is to subside through this twin path of self-investigation and self-surrender. The more we turn our attention within, the more we subside. And that subsidence is itself surrender to God. So we are inwardly subsiding and surrendering ourselves, but outwardly we have certain roles to play. So we play the role appropriately. In the case of Rama, he was a king. Well, he was at that time he would have been a prince, but he was destined to become a king. And later on in his life, he had to go into exile for 14 years, and then we all know the story of the Ramayana. He had all the troubles he had to go through. He had to stand up for righteousness, even in very adverse circumstances. And then when Sita was kidnapped by Ravana, he had to, as a husband, he had a duty to his wife to go and protect her. So he had to go and he had to fight a war and everything. So he had so many roles, like we all have. We may not have, obviously, we don't have the same role as Rama. We are not a king. Hopefully, our spouse hasn't been kidnapped, and so but we each have different types of roles and responsibilities. So these roles and responsibilities are played by the person we seem to be. But this need not conflict with inwardly our surrendering ourselves. So we have to outwardly play our role while inwardly surrendering ourselves. That is the essential message of these. Well, it was 10 verses in the original that Bhagavan selected, and he translated 4 of them. But the message of all of them is essentially this. So the first verse, verse 26, is from that chapter. It is verse that is in the Brihad Yoga Vasistha. It belongs to the part 5, chapter 18. And this first verse is a translation of verses 20 and 23. So the meaning of the Tamil verse is I'll read it in two halves because each half is a statement in itself. Um, uh, so in the first half, which is a translation of verse 20 of that chapter in Yoga Vashista, he says, Vida vidam nilegal elam vicharam sedu. Michamaru Paramapadam Yadu Ondru Undo Adane Didamaha Ahatal Patri Anavaratam Uḽḷadu Nāṛpadu Vera. That is every the second and fourth line of every, in other words, the first half of a verse and the second half of a verse, of both these verses, they end with the same words, Uḽḷadu Nāṛpadu Vera. Uḽḷadu means in the world, Vilayatu means play, and Vera means, oh hero. That is, Vashista is addressing Rama as a hero. In Sanskrit, the equivalent is Loke Vihara Raghava. Raghava is Rama. Vihara means play, and Loke in the world. So this is how we should outwardly behave in the world. So, so the meaning of this first half of this verse is having investigated all states, which are of many kinds, what one exists devoid of falsity, the supreme state, incessantly holding that alone firmly by heart, play in the world hero. So if we an explanatory paraphrase of that is, having investigated or examined or carefully considered all states, which are of many kind, what one state exists devoid of falsity. The word that means falsity also means deceit or deception. But being devoid of falsity means it is the one real state, the state that is devoid of everything that is false and deceitful and deceptive. That one false state, namely Paramapadam, the supreme state, which is the one real state of pure being awareness, Satchit, which is what always shines in the heart as I am. That's an explanation, that's not there in the verse. Incessantly holding on to, holding only that supreme state of pure being awareness, I am, firmly by heart, playing the world hero. So inwardly, we should be holding on to the one thing that is real, namely our own pure being awareness, Satchit, I am. That is what we should be holding on to in our heart, but outwardly we have to play whatever role we have in the world. But that's very, very important. But Bhagavan starts with this, emphasizing that we need to hold on to what alone is real. That is, everything that, whatever appears or disappears is unreal. The only thing that is real is that which is permanent. So all phenomena appear and disappear. They appear in waking and dream, they disappear in sleep. Not only all phenomena, but the experiencer of all phenomena, namely ourself as ego. We appear as ego in waking and dream. We as ego disappear in sleep. But what remains in sleep is our own reality, our own being, our fundamental awareness, I am. That is what exists and shines in all three states. So that alone is what is real. So that is what we have to hold on to. So throughout the waking and dream states, we, as a person, we are outwardly playing so many roles, but inwardly we should be holding on to that one thing that is real, namely our own being, our fundamental awareness, I am. Then the second half of the verse is Edu Sakala Vidamana totrangalaku etatum adai ahatu ullado adei arindai adanal apavayine Uڵḷadu endrum ase pol Uڵḷadu Vera. What that means is what exists in the heart as the reality for all kinds of appearances. Since you have known that, without ever abandoning that view, play in the world hero as if desirous. That is, outwardly we have to play, when we have a role to play in this world, we have to play as if we have desire. Rama, as a king, he obviously needs to have desire the well-being of all his subjects. As a husband, he needs to desire the safety and well-being of his wife. As a brother, he needs to care for his brothers. As a son to his parents, he needs to care for his parents. He had one father. He was born to one mother, but his father had three wives. So he in effect had three mothers. And though one of those mothers was misled into she made a big mistake. She pressed her husband to confer the throne on her son, the son who was born to her, rather than to Rama, who was the firstborn. But though she played that role, Rama was always treated her like his mother. He was always a very faithful son, though she had as a mother, she had done a wrong thing by supporting her own son rather than her stepson. As a mother, she should have been equal to all four sons, but she wasn't. But though she did that wrong, Rama was always very true to her. So he acted as if he had desire. As a king, he had desire for the welfare of his subjects. As a son, he had a desire for the welfare of his parents. As a brother, he had a desire for the welfare of his brothers. As a husband, he had a desire for the welfare of his wife, and so on and so forth. So outwardly, he acted as if someone who had desires, but inwardly, he knew what is the one reality underlying all these appearances. And having known that, he always held on to that view while outwardly acting as if having desire. So Rama, of course, he's attained jnana, he's God himself. So, of course, for him, it is natural to do so. For us, we very easily get caught up in identification with the person we take ourselves to be. And when we identify this person, it's not just asepol. Asepol means as if desirous. We actually get carried away by desires. So what Bhagavan is teaching us in these verses is it's okay to outwardly act as if having desire and anger and all these things, but inwardly we need to be detached. And that is, it is of course much easier to say that than to put it into practice. But part of our, this is an essential part of the sadhana we are doing, of the practice we are doing, because what is self-investigation and self-surrender? We are trying to separate ourselves from all these upadis with which we have now identified ourselves. Upadis means adjuncts. So this person we take ourselves to be, this body consisting of five sheaths, physical form of the body, the life, the mind, the intellect, and the will, we take ourselves to be, these all constitute a person. We identify ourselves with this as a person, and as a person we have desires, we have likes and dislikes. We lose ourselves in this identification. That is the normal condition. But we are trying to, the normal condition of ego always, it's the nature of ego to always identify itself as I am this body, I am this person. So, but what we are trying to do as spiritual aspirants, we're trying to separate ourselves from this person. So the person, as a person, we need to continue playing all these roles. But inwardly, we need to detach ourselves, be inwardly detached, while outwardly acting in an appropriate manner, as if having desire and so on. So when he says what exists in the heart as a reality for all appearances, that is our own being. That is Satchit, the pure being awareness. That is the sole reality. That is all appearances, all phenomena, all objects or forms derive their semi-existence from the semi-existence of ourself as ego. And ego derives its semi-existence and semi-awareness from the real existence and awareness of that is Satchit, namely ourself as we actually are. So this is Satchit is the one reality underlying all these appearances. So we are, since we, in the case of Rama, he's known that already. In our case, we are still seeking to know that. We understand, but all these, whatever appears and disappears is unreal. So we are trying to hold on to what alone is real. So while doing this, outwardly, the outward life needs to go on as it needs to go on. Anyway, it will go on according to destiny, as Bhagavan made clear. But inwardly, we need to detach ourselves from this. So outwardly, we play a certain role in this world, as if having passions and desires and so on. Inwardly, we need to be holding on to that which alone is real. So without ever abandoning that view, without ever abandoning that understanding that what alone is real is I am. None of these appearances are real. Outwardly, we act as if all these are real. Why do we act as if all these are real? Because the one who is acting is the person. And the person is a part of all this appearance. So the person needs to, the person we take ourselves to be needs to act in an appropriate manner. So this person seems to be real, and so it needs to act within these appearances as if all these are real. But inwardly, we need to have a clear understanding all this is just an appearance. It's all just a dream. What is real is only I am. So that's verse. I didn't read the explanatory paraphrase that I'd written for that. What exists, this is the second part of this verse, what exists in the heart as the reality of all kinds, for all kinds of appearances, namely Satchit, which alone is what actually exists, and which is therefore the one fundamental reality that underlies and supports the appearance or semi-existence of all other things. Since you have known that, the one underlying reality, without ever abandoning that view, namely that clear awareness of the one infinite, indivisible, and immutable reality that underlies all appearances, play in the world hero as if having desire. And I add an explanation there as if having desire appropriate to whatever role you play in life, such as the desire to uphold dharma or righteousness, which is the duty of a prince or king. That's appropriate to Rama. He had to uphold as a king, he's a leader in society, so he needs to uphold dharma as for the well-being of society and to set an example as his subjects. He has to set an example for them. We obviously don't have the role of a prince or king, but still we have to uphold dharma. What is the appropriate way to behave according to our role in this world. We have to behave accordingly. That is what dharma is. Dharma means what holds everything together. Dharma comes from the verbal root dru, which means to hold. So what holds everything together, what upholds society, what we need to hold on to. So outwardly, we need to behave in this world in a harmonious way that is conducive to the welfare, not only of ourselves, but of our family and all others. We need to behave in a righteous manner. So it is appropriate to act as if having desire for righteousness, for doing what is the right thing. But inwardly, we need to be detached. Because we inwardly need to be detached, Bhagavan made it clear, it is not for us to try and, this world is full of so many problems. It's not for us, if we are spiritual aspirants, it's not for us to try and rectify the world. Our principal aim is to rectify ourselves by subsiding back into our heart. But so, insofar as we have a certain outward role in life, we need to live that role appropriately. So we need to act in a righteous manner. We're not going out to the world looking for. We're not trying to be do-gooders. We're not trying to go out to the world and rectify the world, but within the small sphere of our own life as a person and our small responsibilities, we need to act in a righteous manner. So to act in a righteous manner, obviously we have to have some desire to act in a righteous manner. So as if having desire for all these things, we have to behave appropriately. And then in the next verse, again, this verse is a translation of two verses, so it's in two parts. So I'll again take it half a verse, half of each verse at a time. So he begins the verse by saying, "Poli mana erichi mahilvu utronon ahi. Poli mana padepu verapu utron ahi. Poli muilvu todacum utron ahi. Pure ilan ilanai ulahil vilayatu vera." What that means is, being one who has seeming rising of mind and delight, being one who has seeming agitation of mind and aversion, being one who has seeming effortful initiative, being one who is devoid of defects, playing the world hero. So outwardly we need to act as if we have rising of mind, as if we're taking pleasure in the good things of life, as if we are agitated and averse to the bad things, as if we are making appropriate effort in every case. But inwardly, we need to be devoid of all these defects. That is the root of all defects is the rising of mind. So outwardly, rising of mind means rising of ego. So outwardly, we act as if we're having rising of ego, but inwardly, we need to be devoid of that. And thus, we need to play our role in the world. So the explanatory paraphrase I've written for this is, being one who has seeming rising of mind and delight. Delight also, joy or pleasure in worldly matters. So, for example, if we're a father or mother, we take delight in the birth of a child and in bringing up a child. Outwardly, that's the appropriate thing to do. we are not to be miserable about everything. So outwardly, I mean, there are things in life when bereavement occurs, we inevitably feel that bereavement and we act appropriately. When something, but in the normal worldly sense, is a joyful thing, like the birth of a child or the growing of a child, that we take joy in that these things. So outwardly, but he says here, what's it? He says, the first word of the verse is poli. Poli means what is false or unreal, or we can take it as seeming. So we to act as if having seeming rising of mind, as if having seeming joy. And again, he says, "Poli mana padepu verupu utronahi." So as if they're having seeming agitation of mind and aversion. So to continue the paraphrase, being one who seemingly has agitation. That word agitation means agitation can also mean anxiety or impatience of mind, and aversion, dislike, disgust, hatred, enmity. That is, it's appropriate to act as if we have aversion to things that are wrong, to unrighteousness. We should have aversion outwardly, but that should only be seeming aversion. Inwardly, we should be free of all likes and dislikes. We should be free of all joys and sorrow. We need inwardly detached, but outwardly acting in an appropriate manner. And being one who seemingly has effortful initiative. That is, one who seemingly initiates and strives with persistent effort in worldly undertakings. But that's not initiative and effort for selfish things, but what is appropriate according to the role we have in life. We have to act in an appropriate manner. That is, when Ravana kidnapped Sita, Rama didn't just sit there and think, "Oh, what to do?" He's taken to her. He took initiative. He gathered allies and he went to fight and to rescue Sita. So there are times when we have to take initiative in life, where we have to make effort and initiate certain things, but it should be appropriate to the role we are playing. We are not initiate things that are not necessary or not appropriate to the role any of the various roles we have in life. So being one who seemingly has effortful initiative, but nevertheless one who is actually devoid of all such defects. So outwardly we act as if we have rising of mind, as if we have delight, as if we have agitation of mind, as if we have aversion, as if we take initiative and make effort. But inwardly we should be devoid of all these defects. But ultimately all these, beginning with the rising of mind, all of these are in the final analysis, these are all defects, but they're defects only when we identify with that outward role. If we identify ourselves with the person who has, I mean, that's why Bhagavan says seemingly, poli, who we have to outwardly act as if having rising of mind, as if having delight, but inwardly we need to be free of all these things. So inwardly we need to be detached, outwardly we act as if we have attachments, and so on and so forth. Playing the world hero. This is how we need to act outwardly. And it's significant that the word play, in Atma-vichara, in Sanskrit, vihara, That means play. This life is not real. This is just a dream. But so long as we, just like an actor on the stage, an actor on the stage knows very well he may be acting the part of a king, but he knows he's not a king. He may be acting the part of a beggar, but he knows he's not a beggar. But he needs to act in an appropriate manner. Otherwise, the drama will lose its appeal if the actors don't act as if they believe they were kings or beggars or whatever their various roles may be. So this outward life is it's a drama. Basically, we have to play appropriately in this drama while being inwardly detached. Just like the actors know that whatever role they may play, what they actually are is just actors. They're not kings or beggars. They're not. But whatever roles they play, that is not what they really are. All they really are is an actor who is putting on a good performance for the entertainment of people. So we need to behave outwardly appropriately, but inwardly we need to be free of all defects, devoid of defects. That means we need to be so pure that we have no inclination to rise at all. Though outwardly we act as if we have rising, inwardly we remain subsided in the heart. And then the second half of this verse is Malenam palkattu viduponahi Manu samamahi ella nilemei kannum Velegal vedatu Ieva veliyil seidu vendia varu ulahil vilayatu vera. That means being one who is freed from the many ties called delusion, being one who is steadily equanimous in all circumstances, doing actions on the outside to suit the disguise, play in the world as required, hero. That word Vendyavaru is a very important word. Vendyavaru, in some translations of this verse, Vendyavaru has been translated as play in the world as you like. But that's not, if we are following this spiritual path, we should be devoid of likes and dislikes. So we are not to play in this world as we like. We play in the world as required by whatever the role we play. And he uses this word Vedatu. Vedatu means that's a Tamil form of the Sanskrit word Vesha, which means the disguise. The Vesha is the outward. For example, if you're a police officer, you have to wear a policeman's uniform. That policeman's uniform is the Vesha. It's what you, so long as you're working as a policeman, you need to wear a policeman's uniform and act as a policeman should act. If you're a doctor working in the hospital, you wear a white coat and have a stethoscope around your neck. That is your Vesha. But Vesha here means not just for, one meaning of Vesha is the outward clothing, but it means more than the clothing. The role we play. When an actor plays on the stage, when the actor plays a policeman or plays a doctor, they don't just wear the appropriate uniform. They behave in an appropriate way. So the Vesha here is not referring just to the clothing suitable to the role we play, but the whole behavior according to the role, suitable behavior according to the role we're playing. So the explanatory paraphrase I've written for this is being one who is freed from the many ties called delusion. That is the many ties, attachments, or bondages that give rise to delusion, confusion, darkness, lack of clarity of mind and heart, and consequently desire. and being one who is steadily or permanently equanimous, equal, impartial, even, calm, tranquil, or dispassionate in all circumstances, but nevertheless doing actions on the outside to suit the disguise. That is, outwardly engaging activities appropriate to your disguise or external roles in this life. Uڵḷadu Vendia varu Uڵḷadu vira. Play in the world as required, in accordance with each situation, hero. So in accordance with our role and in accordance with each situation in which we find ourselves, we play in an appropriate manner. That's what Bhagavan means by Vendia varu, as required. As that each circumstance requires different type of response, different type of behavior. So we have to behave in an appropriate way according to the situation. When I read this, I am reminded of a very dear friend, Yaroslav. He was a Ukrainian, very good devotee of Bhagavan. When the war started in Ukraine, obviously he didn't want to engage in the war, but his country was under attack, and so many young people were being conscripted and into the army to go and defend the country. So he made a decision, but he wouldn't volunteer. But if he was conscripted, he would accept that as Bhagavan's will. So, and he wasn't such a young person. He was 40. But when the country's attacked, they recruit people of all ages, except I think if anyone under 60 or something was liable to be recruited. Anyway, he was recruited last summer, and he underwent a brief training. And when his unit was sent to the front line, very soon after that, he and his whole unit went missing in action. And nobody knows what happened to them, but all they know is that there was very heavy artillery fire. So almost certainly they would all have lost their lives. But there he was a true sadhu. Inward in his heart, he was such a gentle, nice person and a very sincere devotee of Bhagavan. But according to his prarabdha, he was called on to play a certain role. So it wasn't a role that was natural to his nature, but it was the role he was called upon to play. And in accordance with prarabdha, he made the decision he took it, that is what is required. So he played in the world as required. And it was maybe Bhagavan didn't want him to see all the horrors of war and to be in the position where you have to fight against others. So Bhagavan chose to take his life there. But that's an example. There's so many times in life when we are in situations where it's not clear what is the appropriate way to behave, whether we should do this or not do that. That is, it's what is called dharma sangadam, where we are torn between. Obviously, killing is wrong, but when one's country is under attack, then is it right to defend one's country, to fight back or not? There's so many times in life where it's not clear what is the appropriate way to act. But if we are following this spiritual path, we need to put our trust in Bhagavan, pray to Bhagavan to guide us to act appropriately. And definitely, as Bhagavan made clear, what is to happen will happen. And if we are to, if we have a certain prarabdha, we will be made to act in that in accordance with that prarabdha, as Bhagavan says in the first sentence of the note he wrote for his mother. Avarava prarabdha prakaram adakanavan angang girantu artavipan. That is, in accordance with the prarabdha of each one, he who is for that, being there, will cause the dance. In other words, he who is for that means God or Guru. That means Bhagavan. Bhagavan being there means being in each place, implying being in the heart of each one of us will make us act as required. So outwardly, we need to act in this world as required, as if having desire. But inwardly, we need to be detached. So we need to do actions on the outside to suit our vesha, to suit the disguise of a role that we have. But inwardly, we need to be detached. I hope that's a clear explanation of those verses.
Yes, thank you, Michael. These two are probably my favorite verses in Anubandham because of the practical significance of it.
Yeah. Well, all Bhagavan's teachings are practical, but this is showing us how we should
live
practical in the outward, in the sense of our outward role.
Right. So I'm gonna just the first question is from Sarah. I'll just read that. Hello, Michael. The thing with me is that I don't have to act within quotes desires. The world is beguiling enough for me to genuinely want it. More and more, it feels like the appeal of the inner world is the work of grace. And if grace is ever present, how does one open up to receiving it? Success of self-enquiry itself is possibly the work of grace. At times it feels quite cyclical.
Yes. As Bhagavan made clear, grace is ever present, ever available. Grace is what is ever shining in our heart as our own being. But to the extent to which we rise as ego, we are spurning that grace, so to speak. We are turning our back on that grace. That is, grace is that power of pure love that draws us back into the heart. So to the extent to which we as ego rise, we are spurning that grace. So we need to yield ourselves more and more to that grace. We need to subside within more and more. Yes, so long as we rise as ego, it is the nature of ego to have likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on. But so long as our likes, dislikes, desires, and attachments, and hopes and fears, so long as these are strong, we will not be willing to subside and surrender ourselves. So we need to slowly wean our mind off all its desires. But the likes, dislikes, desires, and so on, in their seed form, are what are called Vishaya Vasanas. Every movement of our mind is happening under the sway of Vishaya Vasanas. So desire is what is driving all mental activity, and therefore all activity of speech and body. So we need to wean the mind off these likes and dislikes, desires and attachment. Yes, we all have likes and dislikes, we all have desires and attachment. But if we want to follow this spiritual path, if we want to return home, return back to the source from which we've risen, we have to be willing to give up our likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on. And this is what the process of sadhana is all about. All our efforts to turn our attention within are, will gradually weaken these desires and attachments. But if we make no effort, if we don't try to turn within, if we don't try to subside, then we will continue as we've been continuing for countless janmas, for countless lives. We've been wandering under the sway of our vasanas, allowing ourselves to be tossed here and there by our vasanas. So if we want salvation, if we want freedom, if we want moksha, if we want to free ourselves from this, we need to practice persistent self-investigation and self-surrender, which in the final analysis are one and the same thing. That is, to the extent to which we hold on to our being, we thereby subside into our being. And that subsiding back into our being, that is surrender. And that all happens only by grace. But grace is always available, always trying to help us. But in order to be helped by grace, we need to yield ourselves to it. We need to subside more and more and more. So outwardly, we obviously have to play whatever role we have in life, but we shouldn't identify with that role. Outwardly, we act as if we have desires, but we shouldn't identify with those desires. These desires are appropriate for the person we take ourselves to be. They are not appropriate for us. So let this person act as if having desire, but we should try to separate ourselves from this person and thereby separate ourselves from all its desires. Is that a clear answer?
Yes, it's quite clear. I just, with my experience, okay, so I live alone and I
Yes.
don't go out at all.
Yes.
I have a dog. I have a very quiet life.
Yes.
That gives me a lot of time to practice.
Right.
A lot of time that I then just instead put into just reading about Bhagwan or, watching documentaries or satsangs or listening to Akshara Manavanai and everything else that's available on the internet.
Yes.
But I have had very little success with self-inquiry. I think I get very discouraged because I can't even hold on to consciousness for, I'd say, even a split second before a thought pops in, and it goes around in a cycle. So I just, at a point, I thought to myself, maybe this itself is the work of grace, in the sense that I will only succeed in self-inquiry when I have to. So I've more or less given up.
Yes, we shouldn't give up and we shouldn't be discouraged, because giving up means we're giving up on grace, because it is grace that is, by trying to hold on to our being, we are yielding ourselves to the grace. That is, as Bhagavan said, grace is always pulling us within. But if we're always rushing outwards, finding diversions, that is, reading about Bhagavan, reading reminiscences about Bhagavan, reading Bhagavan's teachings, listening to Aksharam, these are all good things, but none of these are a substitute. These are meant as aids to self-investigation and self-surrender. They cannot be a substitute for self-investigation and self-surrender. So we have to try. And it doesn't matter, even if we are able to hold on to self-attentiveness only for a moment, only for a split second. Every split second, every moment counts. Every moment we hold on to self-attentiveness, we are taking a step forward. So Bhagavan knows our weaknesses, but he's given us this simple task to do, to be self-attentive. Because we are weak, we're able to hold on to that self-attentiveness only for a short a moment or two at a time. And again, our attention gets taken outwards. But as Bhagavan says in the 6th paragraph of Nana, however many thoughts rise, so what? As and when each thought rises, it's necessary to vigilantly investigate to whom does it arise. If one investigates to whom, it will be clear to me. So what he means by that is investigating to whom means turning our attention away from whatever appears back towards ourself, the one to whom it appears. So all these outward things, the words of Bhagavan's teaching, the reminiscences, all these things, these are things that appear. But if we are really contacting Bhagavan, Bhagavan didn't appear in an outward form just for us to hold on to that outward form. He appeared in the outward form in order to tell us that his true form is, his swarupa is what is shining in our heart as I. And that is what we need to hold on to.
There are two specific questions that I have, two issues that I faced.
Yes.
Now, I've had these moments, those split seconds where I have a degree of success.
Yes.
And then the moment I have that, the mind gets excited about achieving that success.
Yes.
You know, then my immediate thought is, oh, this is working. Wow, it worked.
Yes.
And then, you know, it goes away.
Yeah.
The other problem is that because I get the time to read so much, I have now read commentaries that perhaps are talking about the same thing, but I've taken them to be different things. So there is, you know, abiding in the self, which I take to mean that you go back to just being pure consciousness.
Yes.
Then there is the idea of being aware of the awareness, and then self-attentiveness. Now, it could be that all three things are the same and people are talking about the same thing, but I take them to be very distinct. So every time I do self-inquiry, I'm trying a different approach. It doesn't feel the same every time.
Okay. That is, self-abidance means being as we actually are. Of course, we are always what we actually are, but so long as we rise as ego, we seem to be something other than what we are. Instead of being, we are rising. Of course, we cannot rise without being. So being is the eternal reality. But so long as we are rising, we seem to be something other than what we actually are. So self-abidance, or being as we actually are, means being without rising as ego. And how to be without rising as ego, except by holding on to our own being. This is what Bhagavan very beautifully makes clear in verse 27 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu. What he says in verse 27 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, in the first sentence he says, Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham. Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu means the state in which I is without rising. So in other words, just being without rising, that is Nam Aduvai Ulla. That is the state in which we are as that. That means Brahman, our own real nature, what we actually are. So in order to be what we actually are, we need to be without rising. That is, without rising as ego. So how to be without rising as ego? So this first sentence is describing the state of self-abidance, the state of being as we actually are by not rising as I. But how to attain that? That is answered by Bhagavan in the next sentence. The next sentence is a rhetorical question. but the implication of a rhetorical question is very clear. He says, nan udikum tanum ade nadamal, nan udia tanerepe savadu evan. That means, without investigating the place where I rises, how to reach the annihilation of oneself in which I does not rise. Investigating the place where I rises means investigating our own being, because the I that rises is ego. The place where it rises from, obviously Bhagavan is using the word place here in a metaphorical sense. The place where I rises, or the source from which I rises, is our being. So investigating the place where I rises means holding on to our being. And without holding on to our being, how to reach the annihilation of oneself in which I does not rise. That is the state in which I does not rise. Bhagavan isn't just talking about a temporary state in which I does not rise. For example, sleep. I doesn't rise in sleep. Sleep is a state of just being. But sleep is only a state of manolaya. It's only a temporary dissolution of ego. So that's not what we're seeking. We're seeking the permanent dissolution. That's why he makes it clear in this sentence what he means by the state in which I is without rising. He clearly implies that it means tanirape, the annihilation of oneself. In other words, the state in which ego is completely eradicated. That is the state of true self-abidance. And how to attain that without investigating the place where I rises. So the clear implication of this second sentence, this rhetorical question, is that without investigating the place where I rises, in other words, without being self-attentive, how to be without rising as I. That is the implication. Because as Bhagavan makes it clear, 2 verses earlier, verse 25, he makes it clear what is the nature of ego. Ego has no separate existence. It is formless, as he says. It's uruvatra. Uruvatra means it has no form. What has no form has no separate existence. So ego has no separate existence. So what ego essentially is just Satchit, pure being awareness. So how does it come into existence as ego? Bhagavan makes it clear there, the nature of ego is to rise or come into existence, rise, stand, and flourish by urupatri, by grasping form. Since ego is formless, whatever forms it grasps are things other than itself. So what he means by urupatri is attending to or being aware of anything other than ourselves is grasping form. So since the nature of ego is to rise, stand, and flourish, grasping form, that implies without grasping form, ego cannot come into existence, cannot stand or endure, and cannot feed itself and flourish. So that is what he says is, grasping form, it comes into existence. Grasping form, it stands. Grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. So it's only, that is without grasping form, without attending to things other than ourselves, ego cannot rise, stand, or flourish. So how to put an end to the ego? So long as we are grasping form, in other words, so long as we're attending to anything other than ourselves, we are feeding and nourishing this ego. We are perpetuating ego. So the only way to put an end to the rising of ego is to hold on to our own being. Our own being is not a form. So by holding on to our own being, we as ego, because we've got no form to hold on to, we subside and dissolve back into our source. That's what he says in that, implies in that verse when he says, Tedinal otum pidicum. If sought is, well, literally Tedinal means if seeking. If seeking, it takes flight. If what is seeking what? That is, if ego is seeking to know who am I, if it's seeking to know its own reality, if it's seeking its own being, in other words, if it's holding on to its own being, it will thereby take flight, it'll run away, it'll subside and dissolve back into its source. That's why he says in verse 27, without investigating the place where I rises, how to reach the annihilation of oneself in which I does not rise. So self-abidance and self-attentiveness are not two different things. To the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we thereby subside. And to the extent to which we subside, we are thereby being as we actually are, which is what is sometimes referred to as self-abidance.
So just be. There's no need to investigate, because investigation will lead to a movement.
You can't be without investigating. Investigating means, what does Bhagavan mean by investigating? In Nana, he defines what he means by investigating. Sada kalamum manate atma-vichara medrupaya. That literally means the name Atma-vichara is only for always keeping the mind on oneself. So that is what Bhagavan means by investigation. So self-investigation means attending to ourselves. Self-investigation means being as we are. How can we investigate our being without being as we actually are? Being as we actually are is itself self-investigation.
Okay, yes.
Because what
sense.
we are is our being is what we actually are. And we can investigate our being only by being. So being and self-investigation are not two different things. To the extent to which we attend to our being, we thereby subside and remain as our being.
Okay, I think I've understood that now.
So
that I don't have to investigate, just that act itself of self-inquiry is investigation.
Yes, yes. Just being as we actually are, that is investigating our being. How to know our being without being? Our being is not an object that we can know. We can know our being only by being our being. As Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Upadeshundiya, Tana iritale tanne aridalam. Being oneself alone is knowing oneself. So being ourself alone is investigating ourself. And how to be ourself except by investigating the source from which we're arising. In other words, except by holding on to our being and thereby subsiding back into our being, how to investigate our being.
Okay, yes. That's good. I think I have understood.
Yeah. And don't be discouraged. However many times we fail, as Bhagavan said, the only true sign of progress is perseverance. So it doesn't matter if we fail time and time and time again. The very fact that we're trying means we are making progress.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
So, Michael, my question is about the verse, and the story that you told about your friend in the Ukraine has really helped me clarify the struggle that I've been having about that. So in the verse, it says something like as you are seeming the initiator of action.
Yeah.
And so I have my sort of my policy, my practice has been, well, if it is actually coming from the world, then that's an appropriate role. So as your friend said, if he's conscripted into the army, then it's actually happening that seems to be asked of him.
Yeah.
The difficulty I find is that there's a role that I as a writer that is not actually being asked of me, but it appears in my head a lot that I want to write. I want to write something, write, what various things. And where I get tied up is, well, is that just coming from the mind? And it does seem to be just coming from the mind. And therefore, is that just a Vishayavasana that I need to say no, because it doesn't seem to be actually real, in this physical world. And so I kind of get in that mental back and forth.
Yes. That is, we all behave according to our nature. It is natural for us to do so. And some people are inclined to that people have so many different inclinations that lead them in different directions. So you have an inclination to be a writer. Yes, that is a vasana, but that vasana is also deciding what your role should be. Of course, you couldn't be a writer if it wasn't your destiny.
Mm-hmm.
So the destiny is not something random. Whatever destiny, whatever prarabdha we have, is tailor-made to suit us. So Bhagavan knows what are our vasanas, what are our nature. He gives us an appropriate prarabdha. Of course, the aim of whatever prarabdha is given to us, Bhagavan has one aim and one aim alone. Bhagavan is a tiger. He has one aim, and that is to catch us and swallow us. So his sole aim, that is grace, is out to swallow us. So grace has given us this prarabdha, which will be most conducive to us coming to the stage where we are willing to surrender ourselves and allow ourselves to be swallowed by that tiger. So, and another point is, that is, Bhagavan has expressed it very beautifully in the 13th paragraph of Nana. In the 13th paragraph of Nana, he says, well, I'll read the whole sentence, the whole paragraph, but the third sentence is the one that's most relevant to what you're saying. That is, in the first sentence, he defines what is giving ourselves to God. He says, Anma chintane tavira, vera chintane kalambavataku, satram idam kodamal, atmanishta paranai irapade, tanne isanaku alipadam. That means being as Atmanishta Paran, being one who is firmly fixed as oneself, without giving even the slightest room to the rising of any thought other than Atmachintana. Atmachintana literally means thought of oneself. It clearly implies self-attentiveness. So we need to hold on to self-attentiveness so firmly that we thereby give no room to rising of any other thought. By doing so, we thereby remain as Atmanishta Paran, remain as one fixed as ourselves. That is Tanai Isanaku Alipadam. That is giving ourselves to God. So he defines what he means by giving ourselves to God. But he implies here that to give ourselves to God, we need to be so keenly self-attentive that we don't give room to the rising of any other thought. But we have so many responsibilities. We've got so many things we have to do. How can we remain without thinking? Bhagavan answered that question in the next sentence. He says, Isam peril evelo bharate potalum av alavayum ava vahiti vahitu kolkira. Sorry, I'm a little dyslexic. It's difficult for me. I get the syllables jumbled up. I'm not very good at pronouncing. So what he says here is, however much burden we place on God, he will bear all of it. So in the context, what that clearly implies, even the burden of thinking we can leave to him. If we hold on to self-attentiveness so keenly that we give no room to the rising of any thought, he will do all the thinking for us.
Yeah,
so then in the next sentence, and this is the sentence that's particularly relevant to what you're saying, he says, Sakala Karyangalayum or Parameshwara Shakti Nadati Kondiraka Kirapadiyal Namum Adaku Adangi Ramal Ipadi Sevendum, Apadi Sevendum, Endru Sada Chintpadain. What that means is when one Parameshwara Shakti means that supreme ruling power, or the power of the Supreme Lord, when that one power is driving all karyas. Karyas means everything that's meant to happen, everything that's ought to happen, everything that we're meant to do, everything that we ought to do, he's driving it all. So when such is the case, why should we, instead of yielding ourselves to that, be constantly thinking it's necessary to do like this, it's necessary to do like that? So let's not worry about what we do. That is, in these verses, Bhagavan is talking about playing our outward role while inwardly detached. If we are inwardly detached, our mind, speech, and body will be driven by that one supreme ruling power to do what is necessary to do. So why Bhagavan gives us these verses, so that we don't think that we have to sit like a rock in order to follow this path. It doesn't matter. Let the body play its outward role. But that the person we take ourselves to be, it's anyway, in accordance with prarabdha, it's going to be playing its role. If it's a writer, it will be a writer. If it's a mother, it will be a mother. If it's a father, it will be a father. And we have so many different roles we play. These roles go on in accordance with prarabdha. All we have to do is to hold on to our own being, to hold on to Atma-chintana, the self-attentiveness, and so keenly that we give no room to rising of any other thought, and everything will happen as it's meant to happen. And then in the last sentence, he gives a well-known analogy. Well, it's known to all devotees of Bhagavan. It's Bhagavan who first used this analogy for train that is carrying all the burden. When the train is carrying all the burden, why should we, who are traveling in it, suffer unnecessarily, carrying our burden on our head, instead of just putting it aside and traveling at ease? So Bhagavan's path is a very pleasant path. All we need to do is to put the entire burden on him and to travel at ease. But putting the burden on him, we have to be willing to do so. And putting the burden on him means that we shouldn't rise to think of anything. We should hold on to self-attentiveness so firmly, but we don't rise to think of anything. That alone is putting the burden on him. That alone is giving ourselves to God. So let's not worry about the outward roles we have in life, whether it's necessary to do like this or to do like that. In accordance with prarabdha, we'll be made to do. It was my dear friend Yaroslav's destiny to that his brief life should end in such a way. So his mind was driven to make a decision, but when the call comes, he would answer the call.
Yeah, thank you. That's so very helpful.
Right, right.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
So it's a question from, says Mehta. Michael, it's not so much identifying with father, householder, actor, etc. But this ego seems to take the awareness as its own and walk around as awareness instead of awareness as is or beingness as it is. Can you help with this, or is it just continuing inquiring, who am I, find out who this I is trying to be awareness?
Right. We need to distinguish Satchit, which is being awareness, from awareness of anything other than ourself. Awareness of anything other than ourself is what Bhagavan called Sutarivu. That means transitive awareness, awareness of objects, awareness of phenomena. So being aware of things is not real awareness. But real awareness is only Satchit, awareness that is just being. So that is what Bhagavan called Sutatrarivu. That is intransitive awareness, awareness that is not aware of anything, but is just aware, pure awareness. That pure awareness is what we actually are. The awareness, but ego is a form of awareness, but it's a transitive form of awareness. It's an awareness that is always aware of things other than itself. That awareness of things other than ourselves is what Bhagavan refers to in verse 25 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu as urupatri, grasping form. That is, we are a form grasping awareness. That is what Bhagavan means by transitive awareness. We're always constantly, our minds, from the time we wake up in the morning to the time we go to sleep at night, throughout the waking state, throughout the dream states, we are constantly attending to things other than ourselves. That is not real awareness. That is a false awareness. The real awareness is the awareness that is aware of nothing other than its own being. I am. So being aware I am, that is the real awareness. Being aware of anything else is false awareness. So ego needs to let go of this false awareness of other things and hold on to awareness of its own being. By holding on to awareness of its own being, it thereby subsides. But by holding on to awareness of anything else, it rises and dances around. That is the food on which it lives. Urupatri undu mika ongum, as he says in verse 25 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu. Grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. So being aware of anything other than ourselves is the food on which ego lives and thrives. Being aware of our own being is the medicine by which ego will subside and just be as it is.
Thank you, Michael. There is this, okay, so this question, I'm going to just read the question. Michael, could you please explain the meaning of the following verse and the circumstances under which it was composed? Ekam aksharam hridi nirantaram baste swayam likyate katam. And the question
Ekam
asks,
aksharam hridi nirantaram bhasyate swayam likyate katam.
Go ahead. You want to find it and wonder what circumstances it was composed by Bhagavan, right?
Yeah, yes. I think it was composed first in Sanskrit. I think a devotee asked Bhagavan to write ekam aksharam, one akshara, one letter in his book. He probably thought Bhagavan was going to write Om. But when he asked Bhagavan to write that, Bhagavan said, Ekam aksharam hridi nirantaram bhasyate swayam. One akshara. Akshara means a letter in the sense of an alphabetic character. So Om is a character. In Indian scripts, a vowel is a character, or a consonant-vowel combination is a character. So that is an akshara. But the original meaning of akshara means that which is imperishable. So Bhagavan took the deeper meaning of akshara. One imperishable thing is shining always, shining of its own accord. So bhasyate swayam means it shines of its own accord. It shines by itself. It shines, that is, its very nature is shining. Hridi nirantaram, it's always shining in the heart. So that one imperishable thing is always shining in the heart. uh, spontaneously, by it of its own accord. That is, its very nature is to shine. Nothing. It doesn't depend on any other thing to shine. It doesn't like the mind shines by the light that it derives from that one imperishable thing shining in the heart, and the world shines by the light of the mind. So everything else shines, is dependent on some light other than itself. Whereas this ekamaksharam, this one imperishable thing, shines by it is swayam prakasha, it is self-shining. So when such is the case, likyat ke katam, how to write it, who can write it?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Michael.
Right.
Thank you.
Question from
That's a very beautiful verse, and Bhagavan also translated it into Tamil.
Right. I think it is in one of the
It's in Upadesha Tanipakal, and it's also in Guru Vachaka Kavai.
Right. Let me move on to the next question, which is I'm going to read it. If the connection, can you please explain the connection between the screen analogy and the view Douglas Harding pointed to?
The screen analogy, that is what Bhagavan is pointing out, is that all the background, so to speak, on which all phenomena appear, the screen on which all phenomena appear, is our fundamental awareness, I am, our own being. Without this awareness, I am, there couldn't be any experience of any kind whatsoever. That is, the experiencer of all phenomena is ego, which is the adjunct conflated awareness, I am this body. So the heart of ego is I am. That is what the reality of ego. What ego essentially is just that fundamental awareness, I am. But it's only when we rise as ego and mistake ourselves to be a body, but we become aware of phenomena. So the ground, the adhishtanam, the adhara, the base on which everything appears is this. So we can say the base or we can say the screen. I mean, it's just, they're all, no analogy is perfect, but all these analogies are just to make us understand that what is enduring, what alone is real, is our own fundamental awareness, I am. Douglas Harding, what he's written about is rather superficial in comparison. He just says that that is, he's written a book on having no head or something. He said that we never, that is, he's still rooted in the Dehatma Buddhi, in the identification with the body, because he's still talking about awareness of other things. So he says, our head, we see our head when we look in a mirror, but when we're not looking in a mirror, we don't actually see our head because we're looking out of the head. So it's as if there's an empty space there, and all experiences come into that empty space. But that's rather superficial. It's not. What Bhagavan is talking about is something far, far deeper. Bhagavan is talking about our being, whereas Douglas Harding, he's still talking from the perspective of the body, from the perspective of ego that identifies the body as I. So it's what Douglas Harding is talking about is something far more superficial. Bhagavan is pointing out something far deeper. We can say ego is the screen, because it's only in the view of ego that all phenomena appear. But what is the screen on which ego appears? That is the ultimate screen. So ego is, we can say, an intermediate screen. And the body that where ego takes itself to be, that is, without the body we can't see the world, as Bhagavan said in verse verse 5 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu. Is anyone who's seen the wait a second, I'll just get the verse. Bhagavan says in verse 5, he says, Udal Pancha Kosa Uru, the body is a form composed of 5 sheaths. Adalal, Adanal, Aindum, Udalennum Solil Adongum. Therefore, all 5 are included in the term body. Udalandri, Undo Ullaham. Without a body, is there a world? Udal Vittu, Ullahate Kanda Ullaro. Leaving the body. Leaving the body means without the body. Without the body, is there anyone who has seen a world? So Bhagavan says 2 things here. In the first question, when he says, without a body, is there a world? He's talking about the existence of the world. It's a rhetorical question, so the clear implication is that the world doesn't exist at all apart from the body. But he then goes, backs that up with another thing. Without the body, has anyone seen the world? Since none of us have ever seen a world, neither in waking nor in dream do we see a world without a body. It's only through the 5 senses of the body, but we see the world, as he goes on to say in the next word. So, since no one has ever seen a world without a body, why should we believe that a world exists without a body? And then he goes on in the next verse to say, Ulahu I'm Pulangal Uru. The world is a form of 5 sense impressions. There, Andrew, nothing else. So he then goes on to say that there's no world apart from the mind. So in this verse, in verse 5, he says that the world doesn't exist without a body. So superficially, we can say that that is the ultimate screen is I am. An intermediate screen is ego, the false awareness I am this body. And yet another more superficial intermediate screen is the body. So it's only at the body level that Douglas Harding is talking about. He's only reflecting on how we perceive the world from within this body, how it appears. That is when we are perceiving the world, we take this body for granted. But he's saying we don't actually ever see our heads. So it's as if we're seeing out of an empty space. But that's only at the level of body that he's talking. Who is it who takes that body to be I and actually sees the world? It's not the body that sees the world. The body is just the 5 senses of the body are the windows through which we see the world. But who is the one who's actually experiencing the world? That is ego. So the world depends upon the body depends upon ego, and ego depends upon the ultimate screen, the pure awareness I am.